Marcus Brennan stood in his son's hospital room and heard words no amount of money could change. 6 weeks, maybe 8 if we're fortunate. Dr. Patterson's voice was gentle but final, the kind of gentle that doctors use when there's nothing left to fight with. Marcus looked at his son through the observation window. 7-year-old Ethan sat on the hospital bed, rocking back and forth, humming that tuneless sound he'd made since he was 2. Autism spectrum disorder, level 3. Nonverbal. And now, according to the pediatric neurologist standing beside Marcus, dying. The tumor is inoperable, Dr. Patterson continued. It's wrapped around the brainstem. Any surgical intervention would cause immediate paralysis or death. We can manage his pain, make him comfortable. But Mr. Brennan, there's no medical pathway forward. Marcus pressed his palm against the glass. 42 years old, self-made billionaire. Built Brennan Technologies from a garage startup to a company worth $3.7 billion. He'd solved impossible problems, disrupted entire industries, made decisions that moved markets, but he couldn't save his son. What about experimental treatments? His voice came out rough. Clinical trials overseas. I can fly in any specialist in the world. Money isn't. Mr. Brennan. Dr. Patterson's hand touched his shoulder. I've consulted with 17 specialists across 4 continents. The answer is the same. I'm sorry. The words hung in the sterile hospital air. Final. Absolute. Marcus watched Ethan rock, his small hands flapping in that repetitive motion that used to frustrate Marcus, that he'd spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to correct with therapists and behavioral specialists and intensive intervention programs. None of it had worked. Ethan had never spoken, never looked him in the eye, never called him Dad, and now he never would. How do I tell him? Marcus whispered. Dr. Patterson's expression softened. Mr. Brennan, Ethan may not understand the concept of death the way neurotypical children do. His autism, he understands more than people think. Marcus's voice was sharp. Just because he doesn't speak doesn't mean he doesn't know. The doctor nodded. Then tell him with presence. Be there. That's all any of us can do. Marcus drove home to his estate in Greenwich at 2 in the afternoon. The house waited like a museum, 12,000 square feet, 14 bedrooms, walls filled with art he'd never really looked at. He'd bought this place 5 years ago when Brennan Technologies went public. A statement, a monument to everything he'd built. It had never felt like home. His wife Catherine had left 2 years after Ethan's diagnosis. Couldn't handle it, she'd said. Couldn't watch their son disappear into a world they couldn't reach. The divorce was quiet, expensive, final. She'd moved to California, sent birthday cards, never visited. So it was just Marcus and Ethan in this massive, silent house. And now, just 6 weeks left. He parked in the circular driveway and sat in his car for 10 minutes, unable to move. Through the front windows, he could see Mrs. Chen, his housekeeper of 3 years, moving through the rooms. Efficient, professional. The 14th caregiver he'd hired since Catherine left. The first 13 had all quit. One lasted 2 days before Ethan's meltdown sent her running. Another made it 3 weeks before she was caught stealing jewelry from the master bedroom. A third called him at work sobbing. Said she couldn't handle the screaming, the self-injury, the way Ethan would bang his head against the wall when routines changed. Mrs. Chen was different, quiet, patient. She'd been with them for 8 months, the longest anyone had stayed. But Marcus barely knew her. Just paid her salary, left instructions, spent 16-hour days at the office because being home meant facing what he couldn't fix. His phone buzzed. His assistant. Board meeting moved to 4 p.m. They need your approval on the Singapore expansion. Marcus stared at the message. Singapore expansion. Projected revenue increase of 400 million. 2 years ago, that news would have made his entire week. Now it meant nothing. He deleted the message and walked inside. Section 2. The surveillance system. The security room was on the first floor, tucked behind the library where no one would think to look. Marcus had installed it 3 years ago, after the third caregiver was caught selling stories about Ethan to tabloids. Billionaire's broken son. Inside the tragic life of Marcus Brennan's autistic child. The article had appeared in 3 magazines. Photos of Ethan mid-meltdown. Details about his disabilities. Speculation about Catherine leaving. Every private moment weaponized for clicks. Marcus had sued. Won, but the damage was done. So he'd installed cameras. Everywhere. 23 cameras covering every room except the bathrooms. Motion sensors. Audio recording. live feed accessible from his phone. He told himself it was for Ethan's safety, for protection, but really it was about control, about never being blindsided again. The previous caregivers hadn't known about the cameras. Marcus would watch them when he couldn't sleep, fast-forwarding through footage, looking for proof they were doing their jobs, looking for reasons to fire them before they could hurt Ethan or betray the family again. He'd caught the fifth caregiver asleep on the couch while Ethan wandered the house alone at midnight. He'd caught the seventh pocketing prescription medications from the medicine cabinet. He'd caught the ninth on her phone for 3 hours, ignoring Ethan completely while he rocked in the corner, drool running down his chin. Each betrayal had carved away another piece of Marcus's ability to trust. Each firing had been easier than the last. By the time Mrs. Chen arrived, Marcus had stopped expecting loyalty, stopped expecting anyone to actually care about his son. He just wanted someone competent enough to keep Ethan alive and quiet enough to not cause problems. Mrs. Chen had been both. But tonight, sitting in the security room with Dr. Patterson's words still echoing in his skull 6 weeks, maybe 8, Marcus pulled up the camera feeds with different eyes. If Ethan only had weeks left, Marcus needed to know his son wasn't spending them alone. The monitor showed the playroom. Ethan sat on the floor, arranging toy cars in a precise line. 23 cars, always the same order, always exactly 2 inches apart. If Marcus or anyone else moved them even slightly, Ethan would scream until his voice broke. Mrs. Chen sat nearby, folding blankets, not interrupting, not forcing interaction, just present. Marcus had watched this scene 100 times before. It looked like nothing, like a caregiver killing time while a child played alone. But tonight, he noticed something. Mrs. Chen was humming, soft, barely audible over the security system speakers, not a song Marcus recognized, not trying to get Ethan's attention, just filling the silence with something gentle. And Ethan's rocking had slowed, not stopped. He was still moving, still stimming, but the frantic edge was gone. His shoulders weren't up around his ears, his hands weren't clenched into fists. Marcus leaned closer to the screen. Mrs. Chen finished folding the blankets and stood. She walked toward the window, completely casual, and opened the curtains slightly to let in more natural light. Ethan didn't react, didn't scream about the change in routine. That should have been impossible. Marcus scrolled back through archived footage from earlier in the week, found a clip from Tuesday afternoon. Mrs. Chen entering the playroom with a basket of clean laundry. Ethan was mid-meltdown, hitting his own head with his fists. That horrible sound he made when the world became too much. Marcus had heard that sound 1,000 times, had held Ethan through it, helpless, waiting for it to pass. On the screen, Mrs. Chen didn't panic, didn't try to restrain him. She just sat down on the floor 5 feet away, set the laundry basket between them, and started folding. Slowly, Ethan's hitting decreased. He was still crying, still overwhelmed, but his attention had shifted slightly toward the repetitive motion of her hands. Fold, smooth, stack, fold, smooth, stack. After 11 minutes, Ethan stopped hitting himself. He was breathing hard, tears on his face, but watching her, Mrs. Chen never looked directly at him, never spoke, just kept folding, kept giving him something predictable to anchor to. When his breathing finally steadied, she pushed a shirt toward him across the floor, not asking him to fold it, just offering. Ethan stared at it for 3 minutes. Then he picked it up and folded it exactly the way she had. His movements were jerky, uncoordinated, but determined. Mrs. Chen took it without comment, added it to the stack, pushed another one toward him. They folded laundry together for 40 minutes. Marcus's hand shook as he paused the footage. How many times had Ethan had meltdowns while Marcus was at work? How many times had Mrs. Chen sat with him like this, patient and present, while Marcus was in boardrooms making deals that suddenly felt meaningless? If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Marcus spent the next 3 days obsessively reviewing security footage, not looking for theft or negligence anymore. Looking for understanding. He watched Mrs. Chen arrive every morning at 6:30, always through the kitchen entrance. Watched her move through the house with quiet efficiency. But now he saw things he'd missed before. The way she'd rearrange Ethan's toys in specific patterns before he came downstairs, creating order he could predict. The way she'd hum the same melody every time she entered a room, giving him auditory warning someone was coming. The way she never, ever touched him without warning, always letting him see her hands first. These weren't things Marcus had taught her, weren't in any of the instruction manuals he'd left. She just knew. On Thursday morning, Marcus came home early, 10 o'clock instead of his usual 7 p.m. return. He told himself it was because of the diagnosis, because he needed to spend more time with Ethan. But really, he wanted to see Mrs. Chen work without the camera's distance. He entered through the front door quietly, heard voices from the sunroom, not Voice's voice. Mrs. Chen, talking softly. "That's right, sweetheart. This is Pepper. She's very gentle. See how soft her fur is." Marcus moved silently down the hallway and stopped at the sunroom entrance. His breath caught. Ethan sat on the floor, completely still, while a golden retriever lay beside him. The dog's head was resting on Ethan's lap. And Ethan wasn't rocking, wasn't stimming. His hand was buried in the dog's fur, fingers moving slowly through it, his face more peaceful than Marcus had ever seen it. Mrs. Chen knelt nearby, holding the leash loosely. She was speaking in that same gentle tone. "Pepper knows you're special. She can tell. Animals always know." Marcus's throat tightened. Where had the dog come from? He'd never authorized a pet, never discussed it. This was a complete breach of protocol. He should have been angry. Instead, he watched his son, his nonverbal, autistic son who couldn't tolerate being touched, lean forward and rest his head against the dog's side. Mrs. Chen saw Marcus then. Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't pull away, didn't look guilty. She just gave him a small nod, as if to say, "Wait, watch." The dog shifted, rolled slightly to look at Ethan. Her tail wagged once, twice. Ethan's hand moved from her fur to her ear, tracing it carefully. Then he made a sound. Not his usual hum, not the tuneless noise he used to self-soothe. A word. Garbled, unclear, but deliberate. "Ther, dog." Marcus's knees went weak. He grabbed the doorframe. Ethan had never spoken. 7 years. Countless speech therapists, applied behavior analysis, augmentative communication devices. Nothing had worked. The specialist said he might never speak, that his autism was too severe, that they needed to accept alternative communication methods. But Marcus had just heard his son say dog. "Yes." Mrs. Chen's voice was warm, encouraging but not overwhelming. "That's Pepper. She's a dog. You're so smart, Ethan." Ethan looked up at her then. Brief, just a flicker of eye contact. But it was there. "Dog," he said again. Clearer this time. Marcus's vision blurred. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what he was seeing. Mrs. Chen glanced at him again, and this time there were tears in her eyes too. She stood slowly, keeping the dog calm, and walked toward him. "Mr. Brennan," she said quietly, "we should talk." They sat in Marcus's study while Ethan remained in the sunroom with Pepper. Mrs. Chen, no. He needed to stop calling her that. He needed to know who she really was. "Your name isn't Mrs. Chen, is it?" Marcus asked. She shook her head slowly. "It's Sarah. Sarah Chen is my legal name. But I'm not married. Never have been." She paused. "And I'm not just a housekeeper. Who are you?" "I'm a former veterinary therapist. I specialized in animal-assisted therapy for children with developmental disabilities." Her voice was steady but sad. "I had my own practice in Boston, worked with dozens of families, saw incredible breakthroughs. Then 3 years ago, my daughter Emma," her voice broke. She was 8, autistic, nonverbal, just like Ethan. "We were driving home from a therapy session when a truck ran a red light." Marcus's chest tightened. Emma didn't survive. The driver walked away without a scratch. Sarah wiped her eyes. "I couldn't go back to therapy work after that. Couldn't face other parents' hope when mine was gone. Couldn't watch other children make progress when my daughter would never grow up." "So, you became a housekeeper." "I became invisible," Sarah corrected softly. "I took jobs where I could be around children without the pressure of fixing them, where I could just be present without carrying the weight of outcomes." She looked at him directly. "Your agency placed me here. I saw Ethan's file, saw he was nonverbal, autistic, saw that 13 caregivers had already quit. Why didn't you quit?" "Because he reminded me of Emma. Simple, honest, devastating. And because I saw something in him that everyone else missed." "What?" "He's not unreachable, Mr. Brennan. He's just scared. The world is overwhelming for children like him. Too loud, too bright, too unpredictable. They retreat because it's safer than engaging." She leaned forward. "But animals don't judge, don't demand, don't overwhelm. They just exist, and that presence creates space for connection. Marcus thought about the footage he'd watched, the way Ethan calmed around Sarah's predictability, the way he'd folded laundry with her, the way he'd just spoken his first word while touching a dog. The doctors say he has 6 weeks to live. Sarah's face crumpled. I know. I overheard your phone call Tuesday night. She composed herself. That's why I brought Pepper. I've been building toward it for months, but when I heard, her voice broke. If Ethan only has weeks left, he deserves to experience joy. Real joy, not just existence. You've been planning this? For months? I started with small things, bringing in pictures of animals, playing nature sounds, letting him touch different textures, fur samples, feathers. Testing his responses, she smiled sadly. Last week, I brought Pepper to the backyard while Ethan watched from the window. He pressed his hand against the glass, watching her for 40 minutes. That's when I knew. Knew what? That he was ready, that he wanted connection. He just needed the right bridge. Sarah stood. Mr. Brennan, I broke your rules. I brought an unauthorized animal into your home. I implemented therapy without your consent. If you want to fire me, I understand. But please, her voice shook, please let me continue working with Ethan until he doesn't have time left. Please don't take this away from him. Marcus looked at this woman, this stranger who'd been living in his house for 8 months, who'd loved his son in ways he hadn't known were possible, who'd seen past the autism and the silence to the child underneath. Show me, he said. Show me everything you've been doing. Over the next week, Sarah brought 3 more therapy animals to the house. A rabbit named Cotton that Ethan held for 18 minutes, his face pressed close to its fur. A miniature horse named Star that walked beside Ethan in the backyard while he actually giggled at the sound of her hooves on the grass. And a grey cat named Whisper that curled up in Ethan's lap during story time. Marcus cancelled meetings, pushed back deadlines. For the first time in 5 years, he came home by 3 p.m. every day and watched his son come alive. Ethan started making more sounds, not full sentences, but words, clear, deliberate words. Cat, soft, more, each one felt like a miracle. Sarah showed Marcus how to move slowly, how to give Ethan space, how to follow his lead instead of directing him. She taught him the humming technique, the predictable patterns, the way to sit beside Ethan without overwhelming him. And gradually, impossibly, Ethan started looking at Marcus, brief glances at first, then longer. One afternoon, while petting Pepper, Ethan reached out and touched Marcus's hand. Marcus froze. Sarah, sitting nearby, whispered, "Stay still, let him lead." Ethan's small fingers traced Marcus's knuckles, exploring. Then he picked up Marcus's hand and placed it on Pepper's head, showing him how to pet her. Marcus's throat closed. His son was teaching him. After 7 years of Marcus trying to fix, correct, and change Ethan, his son was teaching him how to connect. "Thank you," Marcus whispered, not sure if he was talking to Ethan or Sarah or God. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He went to the security room and pulled up the live feed from Ethan's bedroom. Sarah had started staying overnight, sleeping in the guest room down the hall in case Ethan needed anything. The camera showed Ethan's room, dim nightlight, glowing. Ethan should have been asleep, but he was sitting up in bed, and Sarah was sitting on the floor beside him. Marcus turned up the audio. "And Emma loved horses," Sarah was saying softly. She'd watched videos of them for hours, said they understood her better than people did. Marcus's chest tightened. She was talking about her daughter. "She would have loved you, Ethan, would have wanted to be your friend." Sarah's voice broke slightly. "She'd be so proud that you're being so brave." Ethan reached down and touched Sarah's hair. Gentle, deliberate, sad, Ethan said. Marcus's breath stopped. "Yes, sweetheart," Sarah whispered. "I'm sad sometimes. But you know what? You make me happy. So happy." Ethan lay back down, and Sarah started humming. That same melody Marcus had heard dozens of times. He'd thought it was random. But now, watching his son's body relax, watching the trust on Ethan's face, Marcus realized it was a lullaby, the same one Sarah must have sung to Emma. She was giving Ethan what she couldn't give her own daughter anymore. Time, presence, love. Marcus left the security room and walked upstairs. He knocked softly on the guest room door. Sarah opened it, surprised. "Mr. Brennan, is something wrong? Why didn't you tell me?" His voice was rough. "About Emma, about your training, about everything. Because you were looking for reasons not to trust me," Sarah said simply. Every caregiver before me had betrayed you. I saw it in your eyes that first day you expected me to fail or steal or quit. If I'd told you I was a therapist, you would have thought I was using Ethan for some kind of rehabilitation, using him to heal myself. Were you? She met his eyes. Yes, but that doesn't mean I loved him any less. The honesty of it broke something open in Marcus's chest. He spoke today, Marcus said. Really spoke. Because of you. Because of Pepper, Sarah corrected. Because we created space for him to feel safe. No. Marcus stepped closer. Because of you. You're the one who showed up every day, who saw him when I couldn't, who loved him when I was too scared to try. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Mr. Brennan, Marcus, he said. Please, just Marcus. Marcus, she whispered. He's dying, and I don't know how to. Her voice broke. I can't lose another child. I can't watch him slip away like Emma did. Then we won't watch him slip away. Marcus's voice was firm. We'll fill every moment he has left with joy, with animals and laughter and love. We'll make sure he knows he mattered. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. And in that moment, Marcus realized something that terrified and comforted him in equal measure. He wasn't just grateful to Sarah for helping Ethan. He was falling in love with her. Dr. Patterson called on a Tuesday morning. Mr. Brennan, I need you to bring Ethan in for scans. His symptoms should be progressing, but his last blood work showed inconsistent results. Marcus's stomach dropped. Inconsistent how? His inflammatory markers are down. His neurological function appears stable. I want to rule out lab errors. 3 hours later, Marcus sat in the hospital waiting room while Ethan underwent another MRI. Sarah sat beside him, her hand inches from his on the armrest. He wanted to take it. Didn't quite dare. Whatever it shows, Sarah said quietly, we've given him good weeks. That matters. It's not enough. It never is. She turned to him. But Marcus, even if we only get 6 weeks, that's 6 weeks of him being seen, being loved. That's 6 weeks Emma never got. Marcus took her hand then. She didn't pull away. When Dr. Patterson emerged, his face was unreadable. Mr. Brennan, Miss Chen, could you come with me? They followed him to his office. Marcus's heart pounded so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. Dr. Patterson pulled up scans on his computer. This is Ethan's MRI from 3 weeks ago. He pointed to a mass wrapped around the brainstem, dark, invasive, unmistakable. And this is today's scan. He clicked to a new image. The mass was smaller, significantly smaller. Marcus leaned forward. What am I looking at? Spontaneous tumor regression. Doctor, Patterson's voice was cautious. It's extremely rare, but documented. In approximately 0.01% of cases, pediatric brain tumors begin shrinking without intervention. Are you saying he's not dying? I'm saying the tumor is shrinking. His prognosis has changed from weeks to potentially months or years. I can't promise remission, but Marcus, this is... The doctor's voice broke. This is as close to a miracle as I've seen in 30 years of practice. Sarah's hand tightened in Marcus's. She was sobbing, her whole body shaking. Marcus couldn't speak, couldn't process. His son, his dying son, was getting better. What changed? Dr. Patterson asked. What have you been doing differently? Marcus looked at Sarah, at the woman who'd brought animals and lullabies and love into a house that had been dying right alongside his son. Everything, Marcus whispered. We changed everything. They brought Ethan home that afternoon. He fell asleep in the car, exhausted from the hospital visit, and Marcus carried him inside while Sarah held the door. When they laid Ethan in his bed, he stirred, opened his eyes slightly. Dad, he whispered, clear, unmistakable. Marcus's knees buckled. He sank onto the edge of the bed. Yes, buddy, I'm here. Stay. I'm not going anywhere. Marcus smoothed Ethan's hair back. I promise. Ethan's eyes drifted closed again, and this time Marcus saw peace on his son's face. Not fear, not overwhelm, peace. Sarah stood in the doorway, watching. When Marcus finally stood and walked into the hallway, she was crying again. He called you Dad. I know. Do you understand what that means? Her voice was fierce. He sees you, Marcus. Really sees you. Because you taught him how. Marcus took both her hands. Sarah, I was dying too. Not from a tumor, but from emptiness. From building empires that meant nothing while my son slipped away. You saved both of us. I just brought some animals and you brought hope. Marcus interrupted. You brought yourself, your grief and your love and your refusal to give up. He stepped closer. Stay, not as the housekeeper, not as Ethan's therapist. Stay as family. Sarah's breath caught. Marcus, I don't know if... I love you, he said simply. I love how you see Ethan. I love your strength and your gentleness. I love that you turned your pain into purpose. I love you, Sarah Chen, and I don't want to waste another moment pretending you're just the help. She looked up at him, tears streaming. What if his tumor comes back? What if we only have months? Then we fill them with this, Marcus said, with love and therapy dogs and late-night lullabies, with being present instead of hiding, with building a family out of broken pieces. A family, she whispered. Yes, Marcus pulled her close. You, me, and Ethan, and Pepper and Cotton and Star and Whisper, and whatever tomorrow brings, we face it together. Sarah wrapped her arms around him and held on like she was drowning, and he was solid ground. Okay, she breathed. Okay, Marcus, I'll stay. 6 months later, Ethan's tumor had shrunk by 73%. Dr. Patterson called it unprecedented, called it miraculous. Marcus called it love. Ethan spoke in full sentences now. Still autistic, still needed accommodations, but present in ways that astonished everyone who knew his history. He'd started a special education program where Pepper came with him as a certified therapy dog. Other children benefited from her presence too. Sarah had returned to therapy work, but differently this time. She opened a non-profit providing animal-assisted therapy for families who couldn't afford it, funded entirely by Marcus's foundation, named after Emma. And Marcus had restructured his entire life, sold his majority stake in Brennan Technologies. Now he worked from home 3 days a week, spent afternoons with Ethan, and volunteered at Sarah's non-profit on weekends. The house felt different now, not like a museum, like a home, filled with dog toys and rabbit hutches and laughter and life. One evening, Marcus found Sarah in the backyard with Ethan. They were brushing Star, the miniature horse, while Pepper lounged nearby. Dad, look, Ethan said, pointing. Star likes it when you brush her nose. Show me, Marcus said, kneeling beside his son. Ethan guided Marcus's hand, teaching him the rhythm. Patient, confident. Sarah watched them, smiling. After Ethan ran off to play with Pepper, Marcus stood and pulled Sarah close. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For seeing us, for staying, for teaching us how to be alive. Sarah kissed him softly. You taught me too. That grief doesn't have to be the end. That love can be found in the wreckage. Marry me, Marcus said. Sarah pulled back, eyes wide. What? Marry me. Be Ethan's mother officially. Be my partner. Let's make this permanent. Marcus, are you? I've never been more certain of anything. His voice was steady. I wasted 7 years being absent. I'm not wasting any more time. Marry me. Sarah. She looked at Ethan, laughing as Pepper chased him in circles. Looked at Marcus, this man who'd been buried in grief and work and had chosen to come back to life. Yes, she whispered. Yes. They married 3 months later in the backyard, surrounded by therapy animals and the few people who mattered most. Ethan was the ring bearer. Pepper wore a bow tie. When Marcus kissed Sarah, Ethan clapped his hands and shouted, Happy! And everyone laughed through their tears because that one word captured everything. Happy, not perfect, not without fear of the future, but happy. Because sometimes healing doesn't look like medical miracles. Sometimes it looks like therapy dogs and patient presence and choosing to show up even when hope seems lost. Sometimes God uses the broken people to save the dying ones. And sometimes the person you overlooked, the one serving quietly in the background, turns out to be exactly who he sent to bring your family back to life. 14 months after Sarah and Marcus married, Ethan woke up screaming. Marcus ran to his room, heart hammering. Found his son convulsing on the floor, Pepper barking frantically beside him. Sarah, Marcus dropped to his knees, trying to remember seizure protocols. Sarah, call 911. She was already on the phone, her voice steady despite the terror in her eyes. Yes, he's seizing. 8 years old, history of brain tumor. We need an ambulance now. The paramedics arrived in 7 minutes, loaded Ethan onto a stretcher while he seized again, his small body rigid. Marcus rode in the ambulance, holding Ethan's hand, whispering prayers he'd forgotten he knew. Sarah followed in their car, Pepper in the back seat because she knew they both knew Ethan would need her. Doctor, Patterson met them in the emergency room. His face was grave. "The tumor's growing again," he said after the scans. "Aggressive this time. It's wrapped around new areas of the brainstem. Surgery is still impossible." Marcus's world tilted. But he was better. The regression. "Sometimes tumors go dormant before a final surge," Dr. Patterson said quietly. "I'm sorry, Marcus. This time, we're looking at weeks, maybe days." Sarah pressed her hand to her mouth, tears streaming. "No," Marcus's voice broke. "No, we just got him back. He's talking, he's happy. I know, doctor." Patterson's eyes were wet. "I know, and I'm so sorry." They brought Ethan home 2 days later with hospice equipment and morphine and instructions for keeping him comfortable. Ethan understood. Children like him always understood more than people thought. "Am I dying, Dad?" he asked one afternoon, his voice small. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, Sarah on the other side. Pepper lay at Ethan's feet. "Yes, buddy," Marcus whispered, "because lying would have been crueler. Your body is very sick. Will it hurt?" "No. We'll make sure you don't hurt." Sarah's voice was steady, even as tears ran down her face. "We promise." Ethan nodded slowly. Then he looked at Pepper. "Will Pepper be sad?" "Yes," Marcus said honestly. "We'll all be sad, because we love you so much." "I love you too, Dad. And Mum." He smiled at Sarah. "You're my mum now, right?" Sarah couldn't speak, just nodded and pulled him close. "Good," Ethan whispered into her shoulder. "I'm glad God sent you." The last weeks, they filled Ethan's final days with everything he loved. The therapy animals came every day. Star, the miniature horse, stood beside Ethan's bed, letting him stroke her mane. Cotton, the rabbit, nested in the blankets. Whisper, the cat, purred against his chest. Sarah sang lullabies. Marcus read stories. They watched Ethan's favorite movies, ate ice cream for breakfast, stayed up late looking at stars through the bedroom window. Ethan's non-profit Emma's House sent cards from the families they'd helped, children who'd learned to speak because of therapy animals, parents who'd found hope. "We helped people, didn't we, Dad?" Ethan asked one night, his voice weak. "You helped so many people. Son, you showed everyone that different doesn't mean less, that miracles can happen in the quietest ways." Ethan smiled. "Like Mum finding us." "Yes," Marcus whispered. "Exactly like that." On the last morning, Ethan opened his eyes and looked at Marcus and Sarah sitting on either side of his bed. "I'm not scared," he said clearly. "You're the bravest person I've ever known," Sarah said, kissing his forehead. "Will you tell Emma about me, when you see her in heaven?" Sarah's face crumpled. "Yes, sweetheart. I'll tell her everything. She's been waiting to meet you. And Mum, my first mum. Will she be there too?" Marcus's throat closed. Catherine had never come back, never even called when she heard Ethan was dying. "I think so," Marcus managed. "I think she's been watching, waiting, and she'll be so proud of you." Ethan reached for both their hands. "Don't be too sad, okay? You have each other. And Pepper needs you." As if she understood, Pepper pushed her head onto the bed. Ethan's hand found her fur one last time. "I love you," he whispered. "We love you too," Marcus and Sarah said together. So much." Ethan smiled, closed his eyes, and with his hand in Pepper's fur and his parents holding him close, he took his last peaceful breath. The funeral was small. The therapy animals attended. Pepper lay beside the casket, refusing to leave. Marcus spoke, though he barely remembered the words afterward. Talked about his son's courage, his joy, the way he'd taught everyone around him how to love better. Sarah spoke about Emma and Ethan, about 2 children who'd changed everything, who'd shown her that love doesn't end when life does. They buried Ethan in a cemetery overlooking a meadow where horses grazed, put a bench beside his grave where people could sit and remember. The weeks after were dark. Marcus and Sarah held each other through the grief, but some days the weight was too much to bear. Then one morning, 3 months after Ethan died, an envelope arrived. Inside was a check for $5 million. And a letter. "Marcus, I know I wasn't there. I know I failed him as a mother, but I've followed his story, seen what you and Sarah built, seen the non-profit, the children it's helping. This money is for Emma's house, to expand it, to help more children like Ethan. It's not enough to make up for my absence, but it's what I can give. Tell Sarah she was the mother Ethan deserved, the mother I couldn't be. Catherine." Marcus showed Sarah the letter. She cried, then she smiled through her tears. "He's still helping people," she whispered. "Even now." They used the money to open 3 more Emma's House locations, trained 50 new therapy animals, helped hundreds of children find their voices. On the anniversary of Ethan's death, they stood at his grave. Pepper, older now but still strong, sat between them. "We miss you, buddy," Marcus said to the stone. "Every day." Sarah placed flowers, sunflowers, Ethan's favorite. "Emma loves you," she told me in a dream. "Said you two are friends now." Marcus took her hand. "Thank you." "For what?" "For teaching me how to be a father. For loving him when I didn't know how. For staying." Sarah leaned against him. "Thank you for choosing to live. For not giving up after he died. For building something beautiful from the grief." They stood there as the sun set, Pepper warm against their legs, and Marcus understood something profound. Ethan's life had been short. Only 8 years, most of them lost in silence. But the last 14 months, the months after Sarah arrived, had been full, rich, real, and the legacy continued. Every child who spoke their first words with a therapy dog, every family who found hope at Emma's house, every person who learned that different didn't mean less. Ethan lived on in all of it. "He taught me that presence is everything," Marcus said quietly. "That showing up is love. That miracles look like ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Like therapy dogs and patient caregivers," Sarah added. "Like you," Marcus said, pulling her close. "Always like you." They walked back to their car hand in hand, Pepper trotting beside them, and Marcus sent up a prayer of gratitude. For Ethan, for Sarah, for second chances and therapy, animals and the way God uses broken people to heal each other. For learning, finally, what matters most. Not empires or wealth or control. Just love, showing up, being present. The rest is just noise. If this story touched your heart, remember this. The people serving quietly in your life, the caregivers, the helpers, the ones you barely see, might be exactly who God sent to save you. Don't overlook them. Don't wait until it's too late to see their value. Show up, be present, love the people in front of you while you still have time, because in the end, that's all that matters. Subscribe for more stories about hope, healing, and the miracles hiding in ordinary moments. Your life might depend on seeing them. See you in the next story.